So moving on to my findings quickly, my first research question, remember, was how do adolescents learn and master media literacy skills? So the instructional process of it in these after-school programs. And this was true for both PSU and VFC. I found the same kind of instructional process in both programs. So first, it's student-centered, it's hands-on, and it's experiential. So it's student-centered in that the students brainstorm the topics. It has to do with their lives. They find something they're passionate about and they research it and they write it and they interview for it. They do everything for it. So it's really based on what they're interested in and what they want to do things with. It's also hands-on and experiential in that they learn how to use the equipment right away. In both programs, on the very first day, students got their hands on the equipment, they learned how to use it, and they went out into the community to either practice interviewing people in PSU or to film some shots of the neighborhood and work on a sort of video scavenger hunt collage of their neighborhood in VFC. So in both cases, it was very much about being practical and being hands-on. In addition, they sort of use an apprenticeship model of teaching, and so Ben Kirshner describes this as modeling, coaching, and fading. So what happens is that the expert first models how to do something. For example, they model how to edit on the computer, and then the young person or the novice sort of starts doing it, but the expert is still there to coach them through it. So the young people in PSU or VFC start to edit on their own, but the adult instructor is still there to offer, specific tips or answer questions, and they're sort of coaching them through the process. And then finally, the expert fades to the background. So that's when the young people got more experience and they got more comfortable, and they just went off independently and did their own editing, and the adults were off in the background, still there if needed, but they had really faded to the background. One interesting difference, though, was that at PSU, there was expert to novice peer instruction. So being that PSU is both a longer-standing organization and a youth-led organization, there were people involved in radio, young people involved in radio who had been doing it for several years and were experts, but they were still in high school. And those people helped to serve as instructors to newcomers to radio. And that sort of peer instruction didn't happen as much in Voices for Change because I think in part it's not a youth-led program, but also because it was only 2 years and there weren't people overlapping between the two programs. So there wasn't an opportunity for anyone to really develop that sort of expert role and teach new people. The second question I looked at was, why do youth engage in programs that teach these skills? So I'm going to talk about the motivation behind joining these programs and staying in them. And there's a couple motivations that I found that youth in both programs shared, and then there's some that sort of differed in the programs, which I think is based on how the organizations use media. So first I'm going to talk about the motivations that were shared by the two programs. So one is raising my voice, and the other is doing something positive. Youth in both programs expressed their interest in joining the programs because there was an opportunity for them to raise their voice. And the specific sort of reasons behind that ranged from a more complex analysis or criticism of mass media and its representation or misrepresentation of youth and wanting to contribute their own voice to that story, to something as simple as just wanting to be heard and wanting their story to be out there and to be listened to. In addition, youth in both programs also said they wanted to do something positive. They explained that if it wasn't for this program, they would probably be doing nothing. They would sit at home and watch TV, be bored. And so there was this drive in them to really do something positive, and they wanted to be involved in something that helped their community and helped themselves, and they saw these programs as a way to do that. At PSU, however, there's also this potential for organizing that young people saw in creating media. So one person said it was a natural extension of PSU's work, and another said that media for organizing was the most direct way for her to address frustrations about her education. So they saw creating these radio pieces as a way to continue the organizing for education reform that PSU was already working on. It was a way to reach out to other stakeholders to raise awareness about issues in the community, things like that. So this radio production was a further way for them to use their skills to organize in their community. And that kind of thing didn't happen in VFC because it wasn't a youth organizing program. In contrast, in VFC, what happened was that because it was focused on youth media production, there were a lot more young people that came there because they were motivated to sort of develop skills and interests that they already had in media and communications and journalism. So one young woman said, it was offering everything I wanted to do, right? That's why she joined, because she knew that she wanted to gain more experience, and she was already interested in media production and video and wanting to get some hands-on experience. So that was why she joined. And a young man said that the program helped him gain technical skills that would help him in his career. So he has this idea that he wants to continue on in video production. And so this was a way for him to continue and develop that interest and those skills. And I think that that was also present in PSU. Young people did see that as a part of their motivation, but it was definitely much stronger in Voices for Change because it was a youth video production program specifically. So what does this mean for education and educators, both in and outside of schools? First, I'm going to talk about education sort of more generally, and then talk specifically about what I think it means for educators who work with young people. So for one, we need to remember that young people can be engaged and motivated to learn, right, as evidenced by the dedication and the work of these young people in PSU and VFC. But what adults need to remember is that this means that we need to help by providing the right context for this engagement and this motivation to learn. So we need to provide context that allow young people to take on responsibilities, that allow them to make decisions, that allow them to connect to their existing interests, and collaborate and work with peers, things like that. Those are the kind of contexts that help young people to engage and to really want to work on something and want to learn something. So that's what we need to help provide in education. In addition, new literacies must be taught and effectively evaluated for mastery. So we all know that these young people are clearly able to communicate a message in a way that's very effective and engaging to a variety of audiences. And those are skills that are necessary for success in the 21st century. So that is something that needs to be taught and evaluated to make sure that young people and everyone is understanding these messages, they know how to communicate them, things like that. And that means that we need to move beyond testing, because you can't tell how well somebody can produce a radio piece by asking them multiple choice questions. So I think we need to move more towards performance-based evaluations. And then finally, for education, teaching new literacies doesn't mean eliminating traditional literacies. There's, I think, among a number of people, there's some fear that bringing in new literacies into the classroom necessarily means that traditional literacies are going to go out the window. They think it means that young people are only going to learn how to watch things on YouTube and tweet about it, right? And that they won't learn how to write an essay or construct an argument or things like that. But there's a lot of ways that literacies build on and support each other, right? New media literacies and traditional literacies support each other. So the process of creating something is the same. That writing process of brainstorming, drafting, revising, drafting again, editing, and creating a final product, that happens both in traditional academic writing and also in media production, media literacy, that kind of writing. But in addition, I think there's also ways young people talked about learning how to construct an argument, target a specific audience, convey a message in a specific number of words or a specific time, understanding imagery, figuring out perspective, understanding point of view and bias. All these kind of things that are important in traditional literacy are also things that are taught and mastered in media literacy. So there's a lot of ways that these two forms of literacy can really support each other. And I think that's something that we need to work on more in education. And what does this mean for educators, practitioners, teachers that work with young people in and outside of schools? Well, for one, it means that we need to integrate and spread support for adolescents. So specifically thinking about collaborating across these contexts of in and outside of school, right? Helping young people to connect ideas, to connect literacies, to understand how working in their community can connect to something that they're learning in school, so that they're really engaged in all aspects of their life. And remember that a lot of young people did say that one of their motivations for joining these programs was that they wanted to do something positive. They said if they weren't doing anything, they would just be sitting at home doing nothing. So I think there's a lot of ways that we should really work to engage adolescents, especially in programs related to school and beyond school that really encourage them to develop skills and to keep learning. In addition, educators need to build and maintain respectful relationships with youth. And by respectful, I think what that means is valuing experiences, listening to young people, and supporting their decisions. I asked the young people in both PSU and VFC what advice they had for adults working with youth, and overwhelmingly the response was just to respect them, right? They want to know that they have experiences that are valued by adults, that adults will listen to them, that adults will support them in making their own decisions and help give them guidance and actually, have a sense of what's happening in their lives. And that sort of respect, that genuine form of respect, is something that we need to remember to cultivate when we work with young people. Finally, we need to offer opportunities for young people to raise their voices. Remember, that was another big reason for joining programs like PSU and VFC. And I think that there's a lot of ways that supporting youth voice can help them to build confidence and, mentor them as you listen to them and you value their experiences and show them that they have something to say that's worth hearing and they have something to contribute to society. That's key for developing, active and engaged young people that will become responsible young adults. And so those opportunities to really listen to youth's voices and support them in raising their voices and sharing them with the community is really, really important for educators to work on. And very quickly, I think there's a couple of key questions that we could work on as a community in response to this. So for one, what happens when schools use new literacies in classrooms? So I think it would be great, but what does it actually look like? Can teachers do it? Can we do it in this, context of intense testing and teacher evaluation? But most importantly, will it effectively help young people to learn what they need to learn and to help them be successful in the 21st century? And in addition, how can schools and out-of-school programs work together? So I talked a little bit about the fact that I think there needs to be more collaboration between these two worlds, but what would that really look like? How will they communicate? And how much do we really want to connect the world, the mandatory world of school, with the voluntary world of after school? So I hope that our community can come together to really think about these questions and think about what we need to do together to successfully prepare young people for the 21st century.